The alarm sounded across the bridge of the Liberty Dawn at exactly 0300 hours. Captain Jake Morrison was in his quarters when the noise pulled him from sleep. He sat up quickly, already reaching for his uniform jacket. After 20 years in space, his body knew the difference between a drill and a real emergency. Jake rushed to the bridge, his boots echoing in the empty corridors. Most of the crew was asleep during the night shift. Only a skeleton crew kept watch while they traveled through the Vega sector, charting new routes for Earth's expanding presence in the galaxy. Lieutenant Nina Wells stood at the communications station, her face lit by the blue glow of her screens. She looked up when Jake entered, and he could see the tension in her eyes. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," Nina said. Her fingers moved across her console, adjusting frequencies. "It's on the Universal Emergency Channel." Jake moved to stand beside her. "Can you clean it up?" Nina worked for a moment, filtering out the static and background noise. A voice came through the speakers, high-pitched and trembling with fear. The words were translated by the computer into English, but Jake could hear the panic underneath. "This is the Gentle Current, requesting immediate assistance. We are under attack. Our shields are failing. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." Jake's jaw tightened. He looked at the main screen where their current position was displayed. "How far away are they?" 20 minutes at maximum speed, Nina replied. She pulled up additional data. "The signal is coming from an asteroid field. According to our database, the Gentle Current is a Quellan transport vessel." Jake knew about the Quellans. They were one of the peaceful species in the galactic community, traders who moved medical supplies and scientific equipment between worlds. They had no weapons on their ships. Their entire culture was built around healing and helping others. "What about the Galactic Patrol?" Jake asked. "Are there any patrol ships closer than us?" Nina checked her screens and shook her head. "The nearest patrol vessel is 4 hours away. We're the closest ship by far." The distress call came through again, more desperate this time. Jake could hear other sounds in the background now. Explosions and the grinding of metal. Someone was crying. Commander Troy Bennett arrived on the bridge, pulling his shirt straight as he walked. Troy had been Jake's second in command for 5 years. They trusted each other completely. "What's the situation?" Troy asked. Jake explained quickly. Troy listened, then moved to the tactical station. His fingers danced across the controls, bringing up sensor data. "I'm picking up 3 ships attacking the Gentle Current," Troy said. Energy signatures matched the Kryn Syndicate. Pirates. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. The Kryn were known troublemakers, species that preyed on weaker civilizations. They had thick skin and natural aggression, but they usually avoided human ships. Most pirates did. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, and not all of it was friendly. "Wake the crew," Jake ordered. "Battle stations. Nina, send a message to the Gentle Current. Tell them help is coming." The bridge came alive with activity. More crew members arrived, taking their positions. The lights shifted to red, and the ship's systems hummed with increased power. Dr. Lisa Harper called from the medical bay. "Captain, I'm preparing for casualties. Do we know how many Quellans are on that ship?" "Negative," Jake replied. "But be ready for anything." In the engine room, Kyle Rogers was already routing additional power to the shields and weapons. Kyle was the best engineer Jake had ever worked with. He could make the Liberty Dawn do things that shouldn't be possible. The ship accelerated, pushing toward maximum speed. On the main screen, Jake could see the asteroid field growing larger. Somewhere in that mess of rocks and ice, innocent people were dying. Lieutenant Amy Price sat at the helm, her hands steady on the controls. Amy had flown everything from small shuttles to massive cargo ships before joining the Liberty Dawn. She knew how to handle the ship in tight situations. "Coming up on the asteroid field," Amy announced. "I'm picking up the Gentle Current on visual." The main screen shifted to show the scene ahead. Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Quellan ship was beautiful, with smooth curves and panels that glowed with soft blue light. But it was being torn apart. 3 pirate vessels circled it like sharks, firing weapons and cutting into the hull with mining lasers. "Open a channel to the pirate ships," Jake ordered. Nina worked her console. "Channel open, Captain." Jake's voice was calm and professional. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty Dawn. You are attacking a civilian transport in violation of galactic law. Power down your weapons and withdraw immediately." For a moment, there was silence. Then laughter came through the speakers, rough and mocking. "A human ship?" The voice was deep and harsh. One little exploration vessel? You should leave before you get hurt, human. This doesn't concern you. Troy looked at Jake and raised an eyebrow. Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. Last warning, Jake said. Stand down now, more laughter. Or what? You'll file a complaint with the Galactic Patrol? Run away, little humans. This prey is ours. Jake closed the channel. He looked around his bridge at his crew. Every face showed the same expression. Cold anger mixed with determination. Tactical analysis, Jake said to Troy. Troy pulled up data on the pirate ships. 3 vessels, medium class. Standard shields and energy weapons. Nothing special. They're designed for raiding soft targets, not fighting. Weapon status? Railguns charged and ready. Missiles loaded. All systems green. Jake took a deep breath. The Liberty Dawn wasn't a warship, but like all human vessels, it was heavily armed. Humans came from Earth, a world that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. They built everything to survive, to fight back, to protect. Amy, take us in. Full speed. The Liberty Dawn shot forward like a hunting bird diving on its prey. The sudden acceleration would have crushed a Quellan. But humans were built for higher gravity. The crew barely noticed. On the screen, the pirate ships were still focused on the gentle current, still laughing at the humans who dared to challenge them. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't understand what humans were capable of. Target their weapons and engines, Jake ordered. I want at least one ship intact for questioning. Understood, Troy said. His fingers moved across the tactical controls with practiced precision. Range in 10 seconds, Amy called out. Jake leaned forward in his chair. He thought about the Quellans on that dying ship, terrified and helpless. He thought about all the other innocent people these pirates had hurt. All hands, Jake said over the ship-wide intercom. We're going in. Show them what happens when you threaten the helpless in human space. The Liberty Dawn entered weapons range. The pirates finally seemed to realize that the human ship wasn't running away. They began to turn, to raise their shields, to prepare for a fight. They were too slow. Fire, Jake said quietly. The railgun spoke, and the battle began. The first railgun shot hit the nearest pirate ship before it could even react. The metal slug, accelerated to incredible speed, punched through the shields like they weren't there. It tore through the hull, destroying the engine compartment in a shower of sparks and debris. The pirate ship spun out of control, power failing across all systems. On the Liberty Dawn's bridge, Gary Stone watched his tactical display with satisfaction. Gary had been tracking pirates and criminals for 10 years before joining the crew. He knew exactly where to hit to disable a ship without destroying it completely. First target neutralized, Gary reported, moving to target 2. The second pirate vessel was trying to run. Its pilot had finally realized that this wasn't going to be an easy fight. The ship turned away from the gentle current and fired its engines at maximum power, desperate to escape into the asteroid field. Amy Price smiled as she watched the pirate ship flee. They think they can outrun us, she said. Her hands moved across the helm controls, and the Liberty Dawn responded instantly. The ship spun in a tight arc that would have been impossible for most vessels in the galaxy. Human ships were built different. They were faster, more agile, designed by engineers who grew up watching Earth's atmosphere try to tear spacecraft apart during re-entry. Every system was reinforced, every component built to withstand punishment. The Liberty Dawn cut off the pirates' escape route in seconds. The fleeing ship found itself facing the human vessel again, trapped between the Liberty Dawn and a field of asteroids too dense to navigate quickly. Target their engines and weapons, Jake ordered. Disable but don't destroy. Troy entered the commands and the railguns fired again. The shots were precise, surgical. One hit destroyed the pirate ship's main engine. Another took out their weapons array. The third shot penetrated their shield generator. The pirate ship went dark, floating helpless in space. 2 down, Troy said. 1 to go. The third pirate vessel, the largest of the 3, was still positioned near the gentle current. This was the flagship, the ship that had laughed at Jake's warning. Now its captain wasn't laughing anymore. The pirate opened a channel. Wait. We surrender. Don't shoot. Jake's expression didn't change. Move away from the Quellan ship, now. The pirate vessel started to move, but then something happened that made Jake's blood run cold. The flagship launched a full spread of missiles. Not at the Liberty Dawn, but at the Gentle Current. They're trying to destroy the evidence, Troy said, his voice tight with anger. Jake didn't hesitate. Amy, put us between those missiles and the Quellan ship. Sir? Amy's hands were already moving, but she needed to be sure she heard correctly. You heard me. Block those missiles with our hull. The Liberty Dawn surged forward, positioning itself as a shield between the missiles and the helpless transport. The crew braced for impact. The missiles hit the Liberty Dawn's forward shields. Explosions bloomed across the defensive barrier, lighting up the darkness of space. Alarms sounded on the bridge as the shields absorbed the impact. Troy checked his displays. Forward shields down to 60%. Hull integrity maintained. Jake felt the deck vibrate under his feet, but the ship held. The missiles that would have destroyed the Quellan vessel had barely scratched the Liberty Dawn. Human defensive. Technology was designed to survive Earth's harsh environment, then multiplied for space combat. Return fire, Jake ordered. Disable their weapons and engines. The railguns fired again and the flagship's weapons went silent. Another shot destroyed their main engine. The pirate ship was now as helpless as its victims had been. Launch boarding pod, Jake said. I want that captain alive. In the lower deck, Sergeant Danny Cruz and his Marine team were already suited up and ready. Danny had served in Earth's colonial defense forces before joining the Liberty Dawn. He'd fought pirates, smugglers, and worse. This was just another day at work. The boarding pod launched, a small armored shuttle that could attach itself to another ship's hull. It crossed the distance in seconds and clamped onto the flagship's outer door. Breaching now, Danny reported over the comm. Inside the pirate ship, chaos reigned. The Kryn crew scrambled to defend their vessel, grabbing weapons and forming defensive positions. Their captain, a scarred warrior named Vec, shouted orders at his crew. Kill the humans when they come through, Vec snarled. Show them we're not afraid. The airlock door exploded inward and the human Marines poured through. What happened next would be talked about in pirate circles for years to come. The Kryn were tough by galactic standards, with thick hides that could stop most energy weapons. They were bigger than humans, stronger in raw physical power, but they had never fought anyone from a death world before. Danny moved through the corridor like a shadow, his reflexes faster than anything the pirates had encountered. When a Kryn pirate swung a club at him, Danny ducked under it and hit the pirate with a neural stunner. The Kryn dropped like a stone. The other Marines moved with the same deadly efficiency. They used non-lethal weapons when possible, but they weren't gentle. A human punch, backed by muscles that evolved in Earth's gravity, could break a Kryn's thick bones. The pirates fought back desperately, but it was over in minutes. The Kryn were tough, yes, but humans were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They were tribal warriors who had fought each other for thousands of years before reaching the stars. The pirates didn't stand a chance. Danny found Vec in the command center trying to delete the ship's computer records. The Marine moved so fast that Vec barely had time to turn around before he was on the floor with Danny's boot on his chest and a stunner pressed against his head. Don't move, Danny said calmly. Vec stared up at the human in shock. He'd heard stories about Deathworlders, but stories didn't prepare you for the reality. This human had just fought through 20 Kryn pirates like they were nothing. Flagship secured, Danny reported to the bridge. All pirates captured, no human casualties. On the Liberty Dawn, Jake nodded in satisfaction. Good work, Sergeant. Hold position. We're sending a medical team to the Quellan ship. Dr. Lisa Harper was already moving with her team toward the airlock. She'd worked with Quellan physiology before during her time at the Galactic Medical Institute. She knew they were fragile compared to humans, with lower tolerance for injury and shock. The medical team crossed to the Gentle Current in a small shuttle. When they entered the damaged ship, what they found made Lisa's heart ache. The Quellan crew was huddled in their emergency shelter, a reinforced room in the center of the ship. There were 15 of them, all terrified. Several were injured, bleeding from wounds that looked serious to Lisa's trained eye. The Quellans were beautiful creatures, slender and graceful with skin that shimmered in different colors. Their large eyes were filled with fear as the humans entered. Lisa approached slowly, keeping her movements gentle. She activated her translator and spoke in their language. "We're here to help. You're safe now." One Quellan, wearing the markings of a medical officer, stepped forward. His arm was injured, but he held himself with dignity. "I am Physician Trell. Are you truly here to help us?" "Yes," Lisa said. "I'm Dr. Lisa Harper. Let us treat your wounded." Trell's eyes filled with tears. "We thought we were going to die. We called for help, but we didn't expect anyone to come. And we never expected humans." Lisa smiled gently. "Why not humans?" "We've heard the stories," Trell said quietly, "about Deathworlders, about how dangerous you are." Lisa looked at the frightened Quellans, at their injuries, at their terror. She understood their fear. Humans did come from a dangerous world. They were predators, fighters, survivors, but they were also something else. "We're only dangerous to those who hurt the innocent," Lisa said. She began treating Trell's wound with quick, efficient movements. "Come on, let's get everyone stabilized. You're going home." Around her, the medical team worked with practiced skill, treating each Quellan with care and compassion. The aliens watched in amazement as these fearsome Deathworlders, these predators from a nightmare world, gently tended their wounds and spoke soft words of comfort. On the bridge of the Liberty Dawn, Jake watched the medical operation on his screens. Nina was already composing a report for Galactic Command. Troy was coordinating with the Galactic Patrol, who would arrive in a few hours to take custody of the pirates. Jake thought about the missiles that had been aimed at the Gentle Current, about how close those innocent people had come to death. He thought about all the other ships that had sent distress calls into the void and received no answer. Something needed to change. "Nina," Jake said, "add a recommendation to that report. Tell Galactic Command we need to do something about these pirates. This isn't the first attack and it won't be the last." "Already on it, Captain," Nina replied. Jake settled back in his chair and waited for the Galactic Patrol to arrive. The fight was over, but he had a feeling this was just the beginning of something bigger. 4 hours later, the Galactic Patrol cruiser Harmonious Justice dropped out of hyperspace near the asteroid field. Captain Vesic, a tall Saurix with green scales and intelligent eyes, had expected to find a scene of destruction. What he found instead confused him. 3 pirate vessels floated dead in space, completely disabled but intact. The Quellan transport ship was damaged but stable, with human engineers working on emergency repairs. And the human ship, the Liberty Dawn, sat calmly in the center of it all like a guard dog watching over its flock. Vesic had heard stories about humans. Everyone in the galaxy had. They came from a planet called Earth, a world so dangerous that most species would classify it as uninhabitable. The humans called it home. "Open a channel to the Liberty Dawn," Vesic ordered his communications officer. Jake's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but satisfied. "Captain Vesic, glad you could make it." "Captain Morrison," Vesic said carefully. "Your report says you engaged 3 pirate vessels and neutralized them all in under an hour." "That's correct." Vesic's tail twitched, a sign of confusion in his species. "The Harmonious Justice is a military vessel with twice your crew and firepower. I don't understand how you achieved this result so quickly." Jake smiled slightly. "We had motivation. Those pirates were killing innocent people." Over the next hour, Vesic reviewed the full report and the recordings from the Liberty Dawn's sensors. He watched the battle unfold, saw how the human ship moved with impossible speed and precision. He saw the railgun shots that disabled enemy vessels with surgical accuracy. He watched the boarding action where 6 human Marines took control of a pirate flagship in less than 20 minutes. It was impressive. It was also slightly terrifying. The recordings were automatically transmitted across the galactic network, as required by law for all military engagements. Within hours, every species in the galactic community would see what happened here. On the Gentle Current, Physician Trell was having a conversation with Dr. Harper that would change his understanding of the universe. His wounds were treated and he was helping her care for the other injured Quellans. "I don't understand," Trell said as he watched Lisa work. "Your people are so efficient at violence, yet you're also skilled healers. How is this possible? Lisa looked up from the Quellan she was treating. Where I come from, those skills go together. Earth taught us to fight, but it also taught us to heal. We had to be good at both just to survive. Trell's large eyes grew wider. What kind of world requires such abilities? Lisa smiled, though there was sadness in it. A difficult one. Earth has extreme weather. Earthquakes, volcanoes, diseases, predators. When I was growing up, I broke my arm falling out of a tree. It healed in 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Trell was shocked. For a Quellan, such an injury would take 6 months to heal, and we would need constant medical care. Humans heal fast, Lisa said. We have to. Our world doesn't give us time to be fragile. Trell thought about this. He looked at the other humans working on his ship, repairing damage and helping his crew. They moved with confidence and strength, but also with care and gentleness. You risk your lives for strangers, Trell said quietly. Why? Lisa met his eyes. Because someone has to. Because it's the right thing to do. Because if we don't help when we can, what's the point of being strong? Trell felt something shift in his understanding. He'd been taught that Deathworlders were dangerous, violent, unpredictable, but these humans were also compassionate, protective, heroic. They were predators, yes, but they chose to hunt those who preyed on the weak. I would like to learn more about humans, Trell said. If you'll teach me. Lisa smiled warmly. I'd be happy to. On the captured pirate flagship, Jake sat across from Vec in the brig. The Kryn captain was locked behind an energy field, his weapons confiscated, his crew imprisoned on the other captured ships. Jake didn't threaten. He didn't shout. He simply asked questions in a calm, steady voice that somehow made him more intimidating than if he'd been angry. How long has the Kryn Syndicate been raiding Quellan ships? Vec glared at him. I don't have to tell you anything, human. Jake played a recording on his tablet. It showed the missiles being fired at the gentle current, showed the human ship moving to block them, showed the explosions against the Liberty Dawn's shields. You tried to murder 15 civilians to cover your crimes, Jake said quietly. The Galactic Court will show you no mercy, but if you cooperate, things might go easier for you. Vec watched the recording again. He saw how easily the human ship had taken the hits that would have destroyed the Quellan vessel. He saw how completely he'd been outmatched. 6 months, Vec finally said. We've been hitting Quellan transports for 6 months. They're easy targets. They carry valuable medical supplies and they never fight back. How many ships? 12, maybe 15. I stopped counting. Jake felt cold anger in his chest, but his face remained calm. Why target the Quellan specifically? Because they're weak, Vec said. Because the Galactic Patrol can't be everywhere at once. Because it's profitable. He leaned forward. You think you're a hero, human? This is how the galaxy really works. The strong take from the weak. That's nature, Jake stood up slowly. That might be nature. But we're not animals following instinct. We're civilized beings making choices. You chose to be a predator. We choose to be protectors. That's the difference. He walked away, leaving Vec alone with his thoughts. 2 days passed. The Galactic Patrol took custody of all 3 pirate ships and their crews. The gentle current was repaired enough to limp to the nearest station with an escort. The Liberty Dawn prepared to resume its mission. But then a message arrived from Galactic Command that changed everything. Jake read it twice, making sure he understood correctly. Then he called his senior officers to the conference room. Troy, Lisa, Gary, Nina, Amy, and Kyle all gathered around the table. They could see from Jake's expression that something important was happening. Galactic Command has reviewed our report, Jake said. They're impressed with how we handled the situation. They're also concerned. Concerned about what? Troy asked. The scope of the pirate problem. Intelligence analysis of Vec's ship computers shows the Kryn Syndicate isn't a small operation. They're part of a larger network that's been operating across multiple sectors. Nina pulled up a star map on the table's display. Red dots appeared, marking pirate attacks over the past year. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They're targeting peaceful species who can't defend themselves, Nina said. Quellans, Saurix merchants, Chakit science vessels, anyone they consider weak. Lisa looked at the map with growing horror. How many lives have been lost? Too many, Jake said. But Galactic Command wants to change that. They're authorizing a task force to hunt down the Syndicate and shut them down permanently. And they want us to lead it? Troy guessed. Jake nodded. We're being joined by 2 other human ships, the Titan's Gate and the New Horizons. Together we'll track down the Syndicate's base and end this. There was silence around the table. Everyone understood what this meant. It would be dangerous. They might not all survive, but they also knew it was necessary. There's something else, Jake said. Physician Trell has requested permission to join our crew. He wants to help rescue any other victims we find. He says if there are Quellans being held prisoner, they'll need someone who understands their medical needs immediately. Lisa smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea. He's a skilled doctor and a brave soul. Any objections? Jake looked around the table. No one spoke against it. Then it settled. We leave for Station Kepler in 6 hours to meet up with the other ships. As the meeting broke up, Troy stayed behind with Jake. This is bigger than we expected. I know, Jake said, but we can't walk away from it. Those pirates need to be stopped, and the Galactic Patrol can't do it alone. The Patrol has rules, procedures, protocols, Troy said. They have to follow galactic law, which means they can't take aggressive action without approval from multiple councils. That takes time. And while they're waiting for approval, innocent people die, Jake finished. That's why they need us. Humans don't have the same restrictions. Troy smiled grimly. Because we're not fully trusted yet. We're still the new species, the dangerous ones from the Death World. Exactly. Which means we can bend the rules in ways the Patrol can't. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We're going to hunt these pirates down, Troy, and we're going to show the galaxy what humans do to those who prey on the helpless. I'll make sure the crew is ready, Troy said. As he left, Jake remained at the window. He thought about the Quellans who'd been attacked, about how terrified they'd been. He thought about all the other victims out there, all the ships that had sent distress calls with no one close enough to answer. That was going to change. The humans were coming, and they weren't going to stop until every last pirate was behind bars. Jake touched the glass and made a silent promise. No more unanswered distress calls. Not while he had breath in his body and a ship beneath his feet. The hunt was about to begin. Station Kepler floated in the darkness like a small city made of metal and light. It was a neutral trading hub where ships from dozens of species came to buy, sell, and re-socialize. Jake guided the Liberty Dawn toward the docking port, where 2 other human vessels were already waiting. The Titan's Gate was a cargo hauler, bigger than the Liberty Dawn and built like a fortress. Its hull was covered in armor plating and defensive turrets. Jake knew its captain by reputation. Susan Wright had been running freight through dangerous space for 10 years and had never lost a cargo to pirates. The New Horizons was smaller, a sleek science vessel designed for research and exploration. Its sensor arrays were the most advanced Jake had ever seen. The captain, Dr. Henry Kim, was a respected scientist who had made several important discoveries in his career. Jake met both captains in Station Kepler's conference room. Susan was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Henry was younger, with an easy smile and the distracted air of someone always thinking about 3 things at once. Good to finally meet you, Morrison, Susan said, shaking his hand with a firm grip. I've been wanting to go after these pirates for years. They killed 2 of my friends. We'll get them, Jake promised. Henry spread out a holographic map on the conference table. I've analyzed all the pirate attacks over the past year. There's a pattern. They hit targets in a wide area, but they always retreat toward the same general region, the Talgo system. Jake studied the map. The Talgo system was full of asteroid fields, perfect places to hide a base. How many possible locations? I've narrowed it down to 3 asteroid clusters based on the retreat patterns and the time it takes for the pirates to rearm between attacks. Henry highlighted 3 areas on the map. We'll need to search all 3. Susan leaned back in her chair. What's the plan when we find them? Reconnaissance first, Jake said. We don't know how big their operation is. Could be 20 ships, could be 50. We need intelligence before we go in. And if there are prisoners? Susan's voice was hard. Because you know there will be. Jake had been thinking about that. Then we adapt. Prisoner rescue becomes the priority. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Susan would use the Titan's Gate as the heavy hitter, drawing attention and taking hits while the other ships maneuvered. Henry's New Horizons would stay back and use its sensors to map the pirate base and locate prisoners. Jake's Liberty Dawn would coordinate the assault teams. As the meeting ended, Henry pulled Jake aside. I brought my best scientist, Claire Foster. She specializes in xenobiology. If we find prisoners from multiple species, she can help with their medical needs. Good thinking, Jake said. We're bringing a Quellan physician, Trell. He experienced the pirate attack firsthand. He'll be useful. Henry's eyebrows rose. A non-human volunteered to join a dangerous human operation? That's unusual, Jake smiled. Trell is unusual. You'll like him. The three ships left Station Kepler together, flying in loose formation. On the Liberty Dawn, Physician Trell stood on the bridge beside Dr. Harper, watching the stars slip past as they entered hyperspace. Trell had spent the past few days learning about humans. He'd eaten their food, which was spicy enough to make his eyes water. He'd watched their entertainment, which was full of danger and violence that they somehow found amusing. He'd listened to their stories about Earth, about climbing mountains and diving in oceans and surviving in places that would kill a Quellan in minutes. You're nervous, Lisa said quietly. Trell's skin flickered between colors, a sign of emotion in his species. I've never done anything like this before. Quellans are healers, not warriors. You don't have to be a warrior to be brave, Lisa told him. You're here to help people. That takes a different kind of courage. Trell thought about the faces of his crew, the fear in their eyes when the pirates attacked. He remembered the human ship placing itself between the missiles and the gentle current, protecting strangers at risk to themselves. I want to be like you, Trell said. Like humans, strong enough to protect others. Lisa put a gentle hand on his shoulder. You already are. You're here, aren't you? The task force reached the Talgo system after 3 days of travel. They approached the first asteroid cluster carefully, sensors scanning for any signs of activity. Nothing. The asteroids were empty, just rocks tumbling through the void. The second cluster was more interesting. The New Horizons detected faint traces of refined metals and chemical signatures that matched ship maintenance. They were getting closer. This is the right area, Henry said over the comm. The pirates have been here, probably within the last few weeks. The third cluster was it. Hidden deep among the tumbling rocks, Henry's sensors found something that made everyone's blood run cold. I'm picking up a massive structure, Henry reported. Docking facilities, power generation, life support. This isn't just a hideout. It's a full base. Jake pulled up the sensor data on his screen. The base was sophisticated, built into several large asteroids that had been hollowed out and connected. There were docking ports for at least 20 ships. I'm also detecting something else, Henry continued, and his voice was grim. Concentrated life signs in one section of the base. At least 50 individuals, multiple species. I think they're prisoners. Susan's voice came over the comm, hard with anger. Those pirates aren't just raiders. They're slavers. Jake felt cold fury settle in his stomach. Slavery was illegal throughout the galactic community. It was one of the few crimes that every species agreed deserved the harshest punishment. We're going in, Jake said. But we need to be smart about this. If we just attack, the pirates might kill the prisoners. The three captains held a video conference, their faces appearing on each other's screens. They needed a plan that would save the prisoners and capture the pirates. Susan suggested using the Titan's Gate as bait. The pirates would see a cargo ship and think it was an easy target. When they came out to attack, the Liberty Dawn and New Horizons could hit the base from different directions. Henry proposed using his sensors to map the interior of the base first. They needed to know where the prisoners were being held and where the pirates were concentrated. Jake combined both ideas into a single plan. They would spend 6 hours doing detailed reconnaissance, mapping every section of the base. Then the Titan's Gate would broadcast a fake distress signal, pretending to be a damaged cargo ship. When the pirates took the bait, they would strike. Over the next 6 hours, Henry's science team worked with incredible precision. They used every trick they knew to scan the base without being detected. Slowly, a detailed map emerged. The prisoners were being held in the largest asteroid, in conditions that made Lisa feel sick when she saw them. Cramped cells, minimal life support, no medical care. Some of the life signs were weak, indicating serious illness or injury. How long have they been here? Lisa asked quietly. Based on the biological waste signatures, weeks at least, Claire Foster replied. She was a young woman with red hair and a brilliant mind. Maybe months for some of them. Jake looked at the map and started planning the assault. He called for Danny Cruz and the other Marines from all 3 ships. They would form assault teams and hit the base at multiple points simultaneously. Trell volunteered to go with the assault teams. When Jake tried to argue that it was too dangerous, Trell stood his ground. If there are Quellans in there, they will be terrified when armed humans break down their doors, Trell said firmly. They need to see one of their own kind, to know they're being rescued, not attacked by different predators. Jake understood. He assigned Trell to Lisa's medical team, which would follow right behind the assault teams. Susan's crew prepared the fake distress signal. They even damaged their own ship's hull plating to make it look convincing on sensors. The Titan's Gate would appear to be a wounded cargo vessel, easy prey for pirates. As the sun rose on the third day in the asteroid field, everything was ready. The crews were at battle stations. The assault teams were armed and armored. The medical teams had prepared for casualties of multiple species. Jake stood on the bridge of the Liberty Dawn and took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything they'd planned, everything they'd prepared for, came down to the next few hours. "Susan, begin broadcasting your distress signal," Jake ordered. The Titan's Gate sent out a desperate call for help, claiming engine failure and life support problems. The signal was designed to look like a genuine emergency. In the pirate base, alarms started going off. The pirates saw what looked like a helpless cargo ship, full of valuable goods, just sitting there waiting to be taken. On the sensors, Jake watched 3 pirate vessels leave the base, moving to intercept the Titan's Gate. The pirates thought this was going to be an easy score. They had no idea what was waiting for them. "All ships," Jake said calmly. "Execute the plan. Let's bring those prisoners home." The Liberty Dawn and New Horizons moved out of their hiding spots among the asteroids. The real attack was about to begin, and this time the Deathworlders weren't just answering a distress call. They were bringing justice. The 3 pirate ships that left the base never reached the Titan's Gate. Susan dropped her ship's fake distress signal and powered up all weapons at once. The pirates realized too late that they'd been tricked. The Titan's Gate opened fire with everything it had. The cargo ship's weapons were designed to fight off pirate attacks, and Susan knew how to use them. 2 pirate vessels were disabled in the first 30 seconds. Their engines destroyed and weapons offline. The 3rd pirate ship tried to run back to the base, but Amy Price was waiting in the Liberty Dawn. She cut off the escape route with a maneuver so sharp that it would have injured most alien pilots. Humans could handle higher gravity forces than almost any species in the galaxy. Gary Stone fired the railguns, and the 3rd pirate ship went dark. 3 hostiles neutralized, Troy reported. "The base is launching more ships. Keep them busy," Jake ordered. "Assault teams, go now." 4 boarding pods launched from the Liberty Dawn and Titan's Gate. Each pod carried 6 Marines in full combat armor. They shot across the space between the ships and the base like bullets, too fast for the pirates to target effectively. Danny Cruz's pod hit the base first, attaching to an airlock on the main asteroid. His team cut through the door with plasma torches and poured inside. What they found was worse than they'd imagined. The interior of the base was a maze of corridors carved into the rock. It smelled bad, like too many people in too little space with not enough air recycling. Warning lights flashed red and alarms screamed. Pirates ran through the corridors in panic. Some tried to fight. Danny's team used neural stunners that dropped the Kryn pirates instantly. A few pirates were smart enough to surrender when they saw the humans. Most weren't. Another assault team led by a Marine named Carl Hughes from the Titan's Gate secured the docking bay. They needed to make sure no pirate ships could escape with prisoners. The 3rd and 4th teams moved deeper into the base, following the map Henry had created. Their target was the prisoner detention area. Outside, the space battle continued. More pirate ships launched from the base, 8 in total, but they were disorganized, caught off guard by the human attack. Susan's Titan's Gate took hit after hit on its heavy armor, barely feeling the impacts. The ship was built to survive, and it did its job perfectly. The Liberty Dawn and New Horizons worked together like dancers. Amy would position the Liberty Dawn for a perfect shot, Gary would fire, and another pirate ship would go dark. Henry's science vessel stayed out of the main fight, but its powerful sensors jammed the pirates' communications and targeting systems. Inside the base, Danny's team reached the detention area. What they found made even the hardened Marines feel sick. 53 prisoners were crammed into cells designed for maybe 20. Multiple species were mixed together. Quellans, Saurics, some insect like Chiquit, even a few species Danny didn't recognize. All of them were thin, weak, and terrified. When the cell doors exploded open and armed humans came through, the prisoners screamed and tried to hide. They thought new predators had come to hurt them. Secure the area, Danny ordered his team. Then he lowered his weapon and activated his external speakers. We're here to help. You're being rescued. A young Quellan female pressed herself against the back wall of her cell. Her skin was dull, not the healthy shimmer it should have been. She stared at Danny with huge, frightened eyes. Please don't hurt us, she whispered. Before Danny could respond, Physician Trell rushed past him into the cell. The Quellan physician had followed right behind the assault team just as he'd promised. Sienna? Trell said, recognizing the young female. Sienna, it's me, Trell. The young Quellan's eyes went wide. Physician Trell? But how? These humans saved my ship, Trell explained quickly. They saved me. Now they're saving you. You're safe. Trell's presence made all the difference. The prisoners began to calm down when they saw one of their own working with the humans. They started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was really a rescue. Lisa Harper and Claire Foster arrived with their medical teams. They moved through the cells quickly, assessing injuries and providing immediate care. Some prisoners needed IV fluids. Others had infections that required antibiotics. All of them were malnourished. We need to get them out of here, Lisa said to Danny. Some of these people are critical. They won't survive much longer in these conditions. Working on it, Danny replied. He was coordinating with the other assault teams, making sure the route to the docking bay was secure. On the command level of the pirate base, Jake led his own team. He wanted the pirate leader alive. Someone needed to answer for what had been done here. They found him in the main control room, a massive Kryn named Grath. He was bigger than Vec, covered in scars and meaner than any pirate Jake had encountered. Grath was trying to delete the computer files when Jake and his team burst in. Step away from the console, Jake ordered, his weapon trained on the pirate. Grath turned slowly. His eyes were filled with hate. You humans think you're so righteous, so noble. But you're just animals like the rest of us. Maybe, Jake said calmly. But we're animals that chose to be better. That's the difference, Grath laughed bitterly. You can't stop us. Even if you destroy this base, there are others. The strong will always prey on the weak. That's how the universe works, Jake didn't argue. He simply had his team restrain Grath and secure the computer systems. The files Grath had been trying to delete would provide evidence of the entire trafficking operation. Names, locations, and buyers. Over the next 2 hours, the human team systematically took control of the entire base. Every pirate was captured. Every computer was secured. Every prisoner was accounted for and receiving medical attention. The space battle outside was over. 12 pirate ships floated dead in the void, disabled but intact for evidence. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. The Titan's gate had some damage to its armor, but nothing critical. Susan Wright stood on her bridge and smiled. Not bad for a day's work. The prisoners were transferred to the human ships carefully. Medical bays were set up in every available space. Lisa and her teams worked around the clock, treating injuries and illnesses that had been neglected for weeks or months. Sienna, the young Quellan who had been so frightened, sat in the Liberty Dawn's medical bay while Lisa treated a nasty infection. Trell held her hand and spoke softly to her. Were you scared? Sienna asked. When the humans first saved you? Trell thought about it. Yes, he admitted. I was terrified. I'd heard all the stories about Deathworlders, but they're not what the stories say, Sienna said, watching Lisa work with efficient compassion. No, Trell agreed. They're better. They're what the galaxy needs. On the bridge, Jake received a communication from Captain Vesic of the Galactic Patrol. The Saurix captain was bringing a fleet to secure the pirate base and take custody of the prisoners. Captain Morrison, Vesic said, and there was respect in his voice now. I've reviewed the sensor logs of the assault. Your task force neutralized a major criminal operation in under 3 hours, with 0 casualties and all prisoners rescued. This is remarkable. We did what needed to be done, Jake replied simply. Yes, Vesic said. You did. I'm uploading my report to Galactic Command now. I'm recommending that your task force be given official status as a rapid response division. After the communication ended, Troy came to stand beside Jake. We did good today. We did, Jake agreed. But there's more work to do. Grath said there are other bases, other operations. One thing at a time, Troy said. Today we saved 53 lives. That's worth celebrating, Jake nodded. He thought about all the prisoners recovering in the medical bays. about how close they'd come to losing hope completely. He thought about Sienna's question to Trell, about the fear of humans being replaced by gratitude and trust. The galaxy was learning that Deathworlders weren't the monsters they'd feared. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they came from a harsh world that had forged them into something fierce and resilient. But they used that strength to protect, not to prey on others. 3 days later, the Galactic Patrol arrived in force. The pirate base was thoroughly documented as a crime scene. All the pirates, including Grath and Vec, were transferred to patrol custody. They would face trial for trafficking, murder, and dozens of other charges. The prisoners were returned to their home worlds, each one with a story about how human Deathworlders had saved them. These stories spread across the galactic networks, changing the way people thought about Earth and its people. A Sorix merchant who had been held prisoner for 2 months stood before reporters at a spaceport. "I thought the humans would be frightening," he said. "But when that Marine opened my cell and said, 'You're safe now,' I saw something in his eyes. Kindness, determination, the will to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy should be grateful for humans." On Station Kepler, the 3 human ships prepared to part ways. Susan needed to return to her cargo routes. Henry wanted to get back to his research, but they all knew this wasn't the end. "We'll do this again," Susan said as they shared a final meal together. "When the next crisis comes, we'll be ready." "Agreed," Henry said. "I'm upgrading my ship's systems. Next time we might need even better sensors." Jake raised his glass. "To the task force. To protecting the innocent. To showing the galaxy what humans can do." 6 months had passed since the raid on the pirate base. The galaxy was different now, changed by what had happened in the Talgos system. The story of how 3 human ships had dismantled a major trafficking operation had spread to every corner of the galactic community. The Liberty Dawn was patrolling a new sector when the call came in. It wasn't a distress signal this time. It was an official communication from Galactic Command marked urgent. Jake read the message twice, then called his senior officers to the conference room. Troy, Lisa, Gary, Nina, Amy, Kyle, and Physician Trell gathered around the table. "Galactic Command has approved our task force permanently," Jake announced. "We're now the Rapid Response Division, with official authority to respond to emergencies across all sectors." Troy whistled softly. "That's a big responsibility." "There's more," Jake continued. "We're being assigned 5 additional ships, 2 human vessels, and 3 from other species who specifically requested to join us." Lisa's eyes widened. "Other species want to work with us?" "A Sorix patrol captain named Vesic," Jake said with a smile. "And 2 Quellan medical ships." Trell's skin glowed with pride. "My people want to help." The new ships arrived at the rendezvous point 3 days later. Captain Vesic's patrol cruiser, the Harmonious Justice, was now painted with the Rapid Response Division's new symbol, a circle of stars surrounding a helping hand. The 2 Quellan medical ships were beautiful, elegant vessels designed to provide emergency care to disaster victims. They were commanded by Physician Mara, Trell's sister, and Physician Kess, an older Quellan who had dedicated his life to helping others. Mara embraced her brother when they met on the Liberty Dawn. "I heard what you did," she said. "How you helped rescue those prisoners. I wanted to be part of this, to prove that Quellans can be brave too." "You don't have to prove anything," Trell told her gently. "Being a healer takes courage." The division trained together for 2 weeks, learning how to coordinate their different ships and abilities. The Quellans were amazed by human combat capabilities. The humans were impressed by Quellan medical technology. Vesic taught them all about galactic patrol procedures and regulations. They became a team, different species working together with a common goal: to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The first real test came without warning. A distress signal lit up the communications board at 0200 hours. Nina's fingers flew across her console, pulling up the details. "Captain, we have a disaster situation. A colony ship carrying 3,000 settlers has suffered a critical engine failure. They're caught in the gravity well of a gas giant. Estimate 40 minutes until they're pulled in." Jake was on the bridge in seconds, pulling his jacket on. "How far?" 25 minutes at maximum speed," Amy reported. "All ships, this is Morrison. We have an emergency. Follow the Liberty Dawn." The Rapid Response Division jumped to hyperspace as one unit. 8 ships moving together, human vessels leading the way with the Quellan medical ships and Vesek's patrol cruiser following close behind. They dropped out of hyperspace to find chaos. The colony ship was massive, designed to carry thousands of people to a new world, but its engines were dead, and the gas giant's gravity was pulling it slowly toward destruction. "That's the bright future," Vesek said over the comm. "A civilian transport from the Chikit homeworld. 3,000 souls on board. The Chikit were an insect-like species, peaceful and industrious. They'd been expanding to new colonies for decades, always looking for more space for their growing population." "Can we tow them?" Jake asked. Kyle ran the calculations. "Not enough time. Even with all our ships pulling together, we can't overcome that gravity well before they reach the crush depth." Gary studied the sensor data. "The colony ship has escape pods, but they'll need to launch now. With 3,000 people, the evacuation will take at least 30 minutes. Then we buy them 30 minutes, Jake said. "Amy, position us between the colony ship and the gas giant. Full power to engines, maximum thrust away from the planet." "Sir, that won't stop them from falling," Amy said. "I know, but it will slow them down. Maybe enough." The Liberty Dawn moved into position and fired its engines at full power, pushing against the colony ship. It was like trying to stop a falling boulder with your bare hands, but it made a difference. The colony ship's descent slowed by a fraction. "All ships, add your thrust to ours," Jake ordered. Susan's Titan's Gate moved in beside the Liberty Dawn, then Vesek's Harmonious Justice. Then the New Horizons. 5 ships pushing against the doomed colony ship, trying to give the passengers time to escape. The strain was enormous. Warning lights flashed on every bridge as engines ran at dangerous levels. Kyle and the other engineers fought to keep the power systems from overloading. On the colony ship, the Chikit crew was organizing the evacuation with impressive efficiency. Escape pods launched in waves, each one carrying 50 passengers. The Quellan medical ships, Mara's Gentle Light and Kess's Healing Wind, positioned themselves to recover the pods as they launched. 20 minutes. Nina counted down. 2,000 passengers evacuated. The Liberty Dawn's engine screamed with the strain. The temperature in the engine room climbed to dangerous levels. Kyle and his team worked frantically, rerouting power and cooling systems. 15 minutes. 2,500 evacuated. One of the Titan's Gate's engines failed. Susan cursed but kept the other 3 running. The ship's frame groaned under the stress. 10 minutes. 3,000 evacuated. "All passengers are off the colony ship." "All ships, break off," Jake ordered. "Get those pods to safety." The 8 ships of the Rapid Response Division pulled away from the doomed colony ship. Without their thrust to slow it, the massive vessel fell faster. Pulled down by the gas giant's irresistible gravity, they watched on their sensors as it plunged into the atmosphere and was crushed by the pressure. But 3,000 escape pods floated safely in space, recovered by the rescue ships. The Quellan medical vessels opened their bays and began bringing passengers aboard. The Chikit were frightened and confused, but Mara and Kess's crews worked with calm efficiency. They had medical supplies, food, water, and most importantly, compassion. Lisa took her team over to help. She'd worked with Chikit physiology before, and she knew they were sensitive to temperature changes. The Quellan ships were already adjusting their environmental controls to keep the insect-like aliens comfortable. One young Chikit, barely more than a child, approached Lisa nervously. "Are you a human?" it asked in a clicking voice. "Yes, I am," Lisa said gently. "We heard stories about humans. They said you're scary." Lisa knelt down to the child's level. "Sometimes being scary is useful. When bad things happen, scary can be good, because we scare away the things that want to hurt you." The child thought about this. "So you're scary in a good way?" Lisa smiled. "Exactly. We're scary in a good way." Over the next hours, the division transported all 3,000 Chikit to the nearest space station. The rescue was perfect, with not a single casualty. News networks across the galaxy carried the story. The Rapid Response Division had done it again, but this time something new happened. The story wasn't just about humans being heroes. It was about different species working together, combining their strengths to save lives. A week later, Jake received a message from Galactic Command. They were pleased with the division's performance. They were also receiving applications from other species who wanted to join. A Saurix engineering crew, a team of Chikit navigators, even a few brave Quellans who wanted to be more than just medical staff. The Rapid Response Division was growing, becoming something bigger than just a human operation. It was becoming a symbol of what the galactic community could be at its best. Different species using their unique abilities to help others. Trell sat in the Liberty Dawn's observation deck, looking out at the stars. His sister Mara came to join him. "Do you remember when we were young?" Mara asked. "Father told us that Quellans were meant to heal, never to fight." "I remember," Trell said. "I think he was right," Mara continued. "But I also think the humans taught us something important. Healing isn't just about medicine. Sometimes healing means protecting those who need protection. Sometimes it means being brave enough to stand between the innocent and danger." Trell nodded. "The humans changed us. They showed us that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless." On the bridge, Jake was preparing for another patrol. Troy handed him a data pad with their new assignments: 3 sectors to monitor, 12 trade routes to protect, countless colonies that might need help. "It's a lot of space to cover," Troy said. "We'll manage," Jake replied. "We're not alone anymore." As if to prove his point, a communication came in from Captain Vesic. The Sorix commander had spotted a suspicious ship in his sector and wanted backup. Jake smiled and ordered the Liberty Dawn to the rendezvous point. This was what the division was for. Not just responding to disasters, but actively patrolling, preventing problems before they became crises. They were the protectors of the weak, the guardians of the peaceful, the first ones to answer when someone called for help. Another distress signal came in, this one from a mining station reporting equipment failure. Before Jake could respond, Mara's voice came over the comm. Gentle light responding. "We're closest to their position. Estimate arrival in 15 minutes. Acknowledge, Jake."